The rain was falling so hard it sounded like pieces of the sky were breaking apart and crashing onto the old rooftop. In that stormy darkness, Daniel Miller stood at the small window of his worn-out house, staring at the "Room for Rent" sign he had taped to the front door. It felt like the last spark of pride he had left. A single dad with 2 jobs, overdue bills, and a son who deserved far more than this struggling life, he was running out of time. That night, as thunder rolled across the sky, he whispered a desperate hope that someone, anyone, would rent the room and ease the weight crushing his chest. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected miracles, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Daniel had never imagined his life would narrow into long shifts, sleepless nights, and constant calculations of what he could afford each week. Ever since his wife passed away 3 years ago, he had lived in a blur of responsibilities, holding himself together because his 7-year-old son, Noah, needed him. Their house was old, their fridge often empty, and their clothes fading with every wash, but Daniel's heart stayed soft for his boy. Every morning he packed Noah's school lunch with the same gentle smile, even when his own stomach burned with hunger. He didn't want Noah to feel the fear he carried inside, the fear that if one more thing went wrong, their life might collapse. It was on a quiet gray morning, while Daniel was fixing a broken cabinet in the spare room, that a knock sounded at the door. When he opened it, he found a young girl standing there with a suitcase far too small for her trembling hands. Her name was Emily Turner. She was 19, starting college, and said she needed a simple, quiet place to stay. She didn't look like the typical tenant Daniel had expected. She wore oversized clothes, carried a backpack stitched in several places, and her eyes held a sadness that felt older than she was. He didn't know that behind her quiet smile lay a world of secrets, wealth, loneliness, and expectations she had run away from. Emily walked into the house as though she was stepping into a memory instead of a room for rent. She looked around at the cluttered shelves, the mismatched chairs, the warm smell of pancakes that still clung to the air. It was imperfect, but real, something she hadn't felt in years. Born as the daughter of billionaire Richard Turner, Emily had grown up surrounded by polished floors, glass walls, and people paid to pretend they cared. Her life was planned, protected, and suffocating. When her mother died, her father buried himself in business deals while Emily drowned in silence. Money, she knew too well, couldn't buy love. It couldn't soften loneliness. It couldn't give her the home she desperately wished she had. Emily didn't tell Daniel about her father's wealth. She didn't tell him about the mansion she left behind or the security team who probably searched for her. She only said she wanted a normal life, even for a little while. Daniel didn't press her. He saw something familiar in her eyes, the same quiet ache he carried. He rented her the room at a price far lower than he should have, telling himself it was because she looked like she needed a break. But deep down, his heart simply refused to charge someone who reminded him of his own little boy's fragility. Days turned into weeks, and slowly Emily became part of their tiny world. She helped Noah with homework, cooked dinner when Daniel worked late, and sometimes sat with him on the porch when the weight of life felt too heavy to carry alone. Daniel found himself breathing easier when she was around, as though her presence softened the rough edges of their daily struggles. She laughed easily, cared deeply, and carried more pain than she ever showed. Noah adored her, clinging to her like an older sister he never had, but even as their small home grew warmer, Daniel couldn't hide his worries. One evening, Emily overheard him talking on the phone, his voice tight with stress as he pleaded for an extension on his mortgage payment. She watched him from the hallway, shoulders slumped, head resting against the wall as if he no longer had the strength to stand. It hurt her because she had the ability to solve all of his problems with a single phone call, but she also knew that revealing her true identity might shatter everything peaceful she had found. Emily had never felt so torn. She loved the simplicity, the honesty, the rawness of their life. She loved waking up to Noah's giggles and Daniel's quiet determination. She loved feeling useful instead of unwanted. But every day she carried the guilt of hiding her truth. She knew eventually the world she ran from would collide with the world she had come to cherish. That moment arrived one late afternoon when a black luxury car stopped in front of the house. Emily froze at the window when she recognized the man stepping out, her father, Richard Turner. His face looked exhausted, terrified, and older than she remembered. When he knocked on the door, Daniel answered, confused by the suit, the polished shoes, and the heavy desperation in the stranger's eyes. Richard asked if a girl named Emily lived there. Before Daniel could respond, Emily stepped into view, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Dad?" The world seemed to stop. Daniel's heart cracked with a quiet disbelief as he realized the girl who shared dinner with him, laughed with his son, and cried quietly late at night was no ordinary tenant. She was the daughter of one of the richest men in the country. In that moment, he felt foolish for not seeing it, ashamed of his worn-out floors and chipped paint, and afraid that this man might take her away forever. Richard Turner didn't shout or scold. Instead, he broke down crying right on the doorstep. He told Emily he had been searching for her endlessly, terrified something had happened to her. He said he was sorry for everything, for the loneliness, for the pressure, for not being the father she needed. Emily cried too, because she had wanted to hear those words her whole life. Daniel stepped back, believing their story with him had come to an end. But Emily surprised him. She didn't pack her bags. She didn't walk out with her father. Instead, she took his trembling hand and said she was staying, at least until she finished the semester. This little house, she said, had given her something money never could, a home. Noah hugged her tightly, and Daniel felt something warm and painful rise in his chest. Richard looked around the small living room, at the peeling wallpaper and crooked bookshelf, and something softened in him too. He saw the life his daughter chose, not for luxury, but for love. He thanked Daniel, not with the cold politeness of a billionaire, but with the sincerity of a father who had been saved by a stranger's kindness. From that day on, he visited often, sitting in Daniel's tiny kitchen, learning to appreciate the life his daughter found comfort in. The changes came slowly but beautifully. Daniel's workload eased when Richard, without pride or show, helped him find better opportunities. He didn't throw money at him, he gave him chances. Daniel and Richard formed an unexpected bond built on respect, not wealth. Emily blossomed too, balancing her new relationship with her father and her deep connection with the only family that had ever made her feel truly seen. Their house, once dim and quiet, became filled with warmth, laughter, and healing. Daniel found hope again. Noah found love in places he never expected. And Emily found herself. Everything changed, not because of money, but because of kindness shared between broken hearts. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support truly helps these emotional stories reach more people. And before the story ends, tell us in the comments what moment hit you the hardest. And WHY. In the end, Emily stayed in their home far longer than she planned. She wasn't just a tenant anymore. She became family, a missing piece none of them knew they needed. And Daniel, the single father who once worried about every bill, discovered that sometimes, life brings unexpected angels disguised as ordinary people. And sometimes, the people we help end up saving us in return.